Deputy Speaker, I rise to speak on the programme motion that was tabled yesterday afternoon, shortly before the rise of House, relating to the consideration of hundreds of amendments and new clauses to what is a serious and substantial bill. These relate to some of the most fundamental issues affecting our constituents. Today there is a debate on amendments and new clauses covering domestic abuse, to human trafficking, to transfers of prisoners to foreign prisons. Yet the House was only aware that this was the case yesterday evening. I am sure that members from across this House will have been up late trying their best to prepare, as I was. But my duty to my constituents compels me to place on record my shock and worry about what this means, not only in terms of parliamentary democracy, but the quality of legislation that will actually be passed. Last week, there was an absurd situation where there was a deadline for the tabling of amendments and new clauses for a debate that we did not know what the business of which it would cover. And then I come to the 134 government amendments from my last count, tabled virtually at the last minute. These are not unsubstantial or merely technical, but include measures relating to new offences which would have potentially significant and wide-reaching consequences for our civil liberties and could even result in imprisonment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, these amendments literally include things like further powers to the police to exercise without accountability. And I'm sure I don't need to remind this House that many of our constituents are very worried at the powers that the police already have and how they use them. It's no secret that trust in the police, particularly amongst women, survivors and people from diverse backgrounds, is already very low. And whatever the different views are across the House, surely there is consensus that measures of such significance, measures that could have very severe, potentially life-changing consequences for our constituents, should not be passed without appropriate scrutiny and without many of us even knowing of their existence. Certainly there has been very little public awareness or debate accordingly. Now, as members of Parliament, we have a profound duty to those who elect us regarding the scrutiny of legislation. It's not only about having a functioning democracy, but having workable and functioning laws. There are many questions about impact assessments and disabilities and equalities implications about which we do not know the full implications. For example, Government New Clause 96 prohibits wearing or otherwise using an item for the purpose of concealing identity in a locality designated by the police. And before even getting to a fundamental assessment of this measure as a whole, there are many questions and points of clarity that I know that my constituents would want at the very least to be publicly established. Just to raise one such question, how will this impact Muslim women who wear the hijab or the niqab? Because the phrasing of the new clause refers to using an item wholly or mainly. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, in my closing remarks, I just want to place on record my alarm at this government's now fairly frequent tabling of large numbers of amendments at report stage, the short notice, the compressed time for debate and scrutiny, and to be honest, what many of us experience as utter confusion regarding timetabling, which is very dangerous in terms of the precedent that it sets. It's not in the spirit of parliamentary democracy, and I urge the government to withdraw these extra substantial amendments and allow for proper, democratic, sensible and transparent scrutiny that I know our constituents do expect of us. Yes.